Good morning. Unfortunately, it is still wet, and I think parts of New South Wales, you guys are really wet, so I do feel for you over there. So for today's weekly walkthrough, same thing as a couple of weeks ago of just using the noticing map to choose what we do next, choose how we want to show up, particularly during tough times, which for many of us at the moment is what happens when it's really wet during harvest. So I've got the map here, and to save time, I have worked through it a little bit already. And what I thought I would do is basically, instead of writing as I do it, just go through my example that I've got here. And so what I've got is the example in the situation up here of having too much rain, starting to have shock rain, and just that tricky situation of managing what we're going to do to get through harvest. And so I started today of looking at, okay, well, what's most important to me? Who and what matters most to me? And for us, or for me, having a successful farm business is important. Being able to pay these bills is important. But then taking that step back and thinking, okay, what's actually most important as well is it's about our family, my husband, my kids, and having fun and supporting each other. But what starts to happen when we're thinking about what's happened with the crops and how everything's going, what is the stuff that shows up inside which kind of starts getting in the way? So I start getting frustration. We get kind of those physical sensations of having tightness in the chest, lump in my throat, tense shoulders, start having thoughts come up of this isn't fair, we're never going to be able to pay the debts. And so when we're kind of, I'm working backwards with my camera here. When we get hooked up in all of that stuff, what are the things that we start doing? And it might be kind of thinking over and over in my mind about the things that have gone wrong. It might be trying to get rid of some of that discomfort by drinking more. Often we end up kind of going for a drive around to check the crops or going, right, I'm just going to sleep to try and feel better. And what we can do is add an extra little bit into the map and look at, okay, how helpful are these things that we do in the short term, in the long term, and then how important are they? So I'll show you an example of this. So if you kind of add those extra columns in and then think about, okay, so how workable are those actions that I'm doing? So say when my mind keeps going over and over about what's gone wrong. In the short term, it kind of does help a little bit in getting rid of some of that frustration. And I can see how it kind of feeds in up here. But in terms of actually taking me towards what matters most to me, in the long term, it doesn't work so well. So I'm going to put kind of pluses in the short term and minuses in the long term. So short term, it kind of, whoopsies, using my brain backwards here. Short term, it kind of does help in getting rid of this stuff up here. Long term, it's not so helpful for moving me towards that. And in terms of moving me towards that stuff that's really important, it's really not doing that particularly well at all. And I guess the same with drinking more. Short term, does a great job at getting rid of those feelings. Long term, it's not helping to pay the bills. It doesn't really help me connect and interact with the family. So it's really not taking me towards what's important either. But then what about when I look at kind of when we go for a drive? And so again, short term, it's kind of helps get rid of that stuff, but also the long term, if I change it and that we do it as something together with the family, depending on the floods, that's actually something that's working pretty well. And the same for having a sleep. In the short term, it helps kind of ease some of those feelings of frustration. But long term, actually taking that time to have a nap or have a rest and catch up on some of that sleep debt, not a bad thing either. Depends on the personal situation that's going on there. But if you can see here, we kind of start to see, okay, where those ideas are fitting. Whoops. Okay. And then we can again step over to this side and look at, okay, if I was really living in line with what matters most to me, what would I be doing? And so just a couple of things that we can do is maybe instead of just kind of going for a drive by ourselves, getting the family in the ute and going for a drive all together to just have that time spending together. And then focusing on what we can actually do on the farm right now. So getting all the bins ready so that we've got empty bins ready to just knuckle down into harvest as soon as it dries out. So that's, I guess, just a brief overview of a map that I've done today. Again, if you've got the notepad at home, give it a shot. Just jump on, try it out. If you don't, just draw yourself out those couple of lines, looking at the stuff that goes on inside of you, those external actions, the behaviors that you do, and just see if you can notice those things that take you towards what's most important and the things that take you away, or the things that you kind of do to move away from discomfort, particularly in that area over there as well. And then, yeah, I'd love it if you flicked across a picture of your completed ones, however it worked out for you, if you found it helpful, any challenges you've had with it. Keep me posted. I'd love to hear with it. Okay. And if you've got something that you'd love me to focus on for a future weekly walkthrough as well, let me know. All right. Good luck. Take care. And I will see you next week.